Hi, this is Herb Shapiro with the Dr VAX channel, and we have a very special video here today. It's a video for anyone who has struggled to use a 3D printer and wants to find a simpler way to do it, or anyone who has never used a 3D printer and you're just curious about how to use a 3D printer, or anyone who has a friend or family member that needs to find an easier way to use a 3D printer. Because today I'm going to teach you how to use a 3D printer to print objects for fun or profit or practical uses, all without installing any software in your computer. Because the installation of software on a computer is often a barrier to people starting out with 3D printing. So stay tuned and let's learn something together. Before I get started, if this is the first time you're watching a Dr. VAX video, let me explain who Dr. VAX is. Dr. VAX is not a person. Dr. VAX is a community of people who like to make things, but may or may not have deep technical skills. So this is a community of people who want to learn how to use technology, computers, 3D printers, wood turning lathes, electronics, a little bit about programming, so they can make things, create things for practical use, for profit, with their kids in order to build memories. So if you want to learn more about Dr. VAX, you can just go to drvax.com. You can subscribe to this video, share this video with other people, or there's a wonderful, completely free discussion group called forum.drvax.com where you can go and post questions and other people from the community will help you out. So let's get started with 3D printing. You're going to need the following things to begin your journey in 3D printing. You're going to need a computer. That could be a Mac, I have a Mac here, could be a PC, could be a Chromebook. So yes, you can use a $200, $250 Chromebook to do everything you need for 3D printing. It could also be a tablet. I think a phone is probably difficult to use because the screen is just too small. But a tablet with a browser will work just fine. What else will you need? Well, you'll need a 3D printer. I have 3 examples here. There are more in the background in this video. These 3 printers are all right around $200, $250. This is the Monoprice Cadet, maybe the easiest 3D printer I've ever used. The price actually went up on this printer. It's now selling for about $250. This is the Monoprice Select Mini. You can pick one of these up for about $225. This is an ANET ET4. Now, in terms of bang for your buck, this ANET ET4 at between $200 and $250, depending on the model, gives you a lot more printer, but there's a little more work you have to do to get started. The Cadet, basically you plug it in and it works. The Monoprice Select Mini is somewhere in between. Another group of printers that are excellent for beginners are the Creality printers. You may be able to see off on the side, there's a Creality Ender 5 in the background. That's a more expensive printer, but Creality Ender 3 printers in different models are also at the $225 to $260 range. The next thing you're going to need is some filament. Now, your 3D printer may come with some filament, but you can go onto Amazon and buy a roll of filament for about 20 bucks. I recommend Hatchbox if you're buying it on Amazon. It's a very reliable, easy to use filament. If you want to go somewhere else, I would recommend the Matter Hackers Build Basic PLA filament, which I think is excellent, and that's what's here on this printer. What about tools? What tools will you need? Well, one of the tools is Magic Glue. Magic Glue just makes it much easier for prints to stick to the print surface. If a print comes loose while you're printing it, that print will fail. So if you rub a little bit of this on, you can also buy this online, onto your print surface. It's just going to make your life easier. You'll need a diagonal cutter because you need to be able to cut your filament to load it into the printer. If you have a printer that does not have a removable print surface like this, this is a paint scraper. It's a razor blade style paint scraper. I think it does the best job of anything I've used to get prints off the print surface. When you're ready to print, you're going to print from an SD card. An SD card, these are very tiny. So you're going to load the file you want to print onto an SD card. Then you're going to place that into your printer. Now, it's hard to actually press these SD cards all the way in. Some printers, it's easier. Some printers, it's harder. On the Creality printers, I always find it hard. On this printer, it's pretty hard. I like to just use a popsicle stick to do that. Why a popsicle stick? Because you're not going to damage anything. It's wood. I also like to use a popsicle stick when you're setting up your printer. If there's filament that's hanging from the print head, popsicle stick is a wonderful way to scrape that off because, once again, it's wood. It's not going to damage the printer. So those are the items you're going to need: a 3D printer, a computer of some type, a couple consumables, an SD card. Now, how do I prepare something to print? Well, you start by signing up for Astroprint. Astroprint is completely free to use for up to 2 printers. So if you're doing this at home, that probably has you covered. So I'm going to go to astroprint.com. I'm going to click on Start Using Astroprint. And then I'm going to select the basic or free version and click on Let's Go. I already have an Astroprint account, so I'm going to click on Sign In. And I'll sign in here. You'll see my password was saved by my password software. I'm going to sign in. So now we'll see what Astroprint looks like. Don't get scared. You're going to use 2 of these icons. So Astroprint has quite a number of capabilities. We're going to use the design library and the Thingiverse link. Now, Thingiverse is from a completely different company. Thingiverse is a repository. It's a place on the internet where there are tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of models that you can print. So we're going to start by actually going to Thingiverse, even though we're inside Astroprint. So I'm going to click on Thingiverse here, and we'll see some sample models. These come from the home page of Thingiverse. And let's say I want a pop can opener. That's actually this model right here. I see it on the screen. I click on it. And then down here, I want to click on the plus. The plus is going to add this model into Astroprint. Now, why do I need to do that? Well, the models you download from the web are in a 3-dimensional format called an STL file. An STL file is a file that's designed for use with 3D drawing or manipulation programs. Our 3D printer doesn't know how to print STL files. It knows all 3 of these printers know how to print files in a format called G-code. The difference is that SD files are 3D files. G-code files take a 3-dimensional object and they divide it into individual layers. So our printer can print one layer, move up, print another layer, move up, print another layer, move up. So how do we convert an STL file into a G-code file? We're going to do it online in Astroprint. So I'm going to click the plus here. And Astroprint is going to load this object into the design area. So let's now close this. Click back on this icon in the corner with all of the colored boxes. It'll take me back to my dashboard. Now that we've selected an object on Thingiverse to print, and we're back in Astroprint, we have to set up our printer. So we're going to go here to Printer Profiles. We're going to say New Printer Profile, and we're going to select our manufacturer, Monoprice. Select the printer type, select Mini, and say Add to my printer profiles. So now we have a printer defined here. However, your printer might not be listed. There were lots of printers listed there, but it might not be. So maybe you're using the Monoprice Select Mini Pro, not listed. Well, you just select the printer that's closest. Most of the time that's going to work. So I could select the Select Mini. I have here a ANET ET4, not listed. I could select the ANET ET8. Probably will work fine to get us started. And as you become more experienced, you can fine-tune your printer definition. A printer definition is called a profile. In our case, it was here. But now we need to know what we're going to print with, and there's 0 materials listed here. So we're going to add a material. We're going to create a custom material. We're going to call it PLA. All of these defaults are generally the same. We're going to say we're going to print at 205 degrees and a bed temperature of 65. The extruder temperature listed here is the temperature of this nozzle. The bed temperature here is the temperature of this surface. Let's talk a little bit more about those two temperatures, the extruder temperature and the bed temperature. The extruder temperature is the temperature at which your filament will convert into a semi-liquid form, so it can be extruded by the hot end onto your print surface. On the side of each roll of filament, each reel of filament, you'll find a range of temperatures. It might say 180 to 210. When the temperature is a little hotter, it is easier for the extruder to force it out of the nozzle, and it will have better adhesion to the print surface. Likewise, by making the print bed a little hotter, it's more likely that our prints will stick. One of the most common problems for people printing their first prints is they don't stick to the print surface. The combination of the higher temperatures and magic goo on the print surface should help with that. And we're going to go to create. So now we have a material under the select mini that is called PLA. So now we're going to go back to the main menu by clicking on the little icon with all the colors. We're going to go to our design library. And you'll see here is something called print. We're not going to use print because that assumes our printer is directly connected to Astroprint. And our printers aren't. And the reason is you have to buy a piece of equipment to do that. So we're going to click on the 3 dots here and select Slice. Now the system has already selected our printer because we only have one, selected our material. We're going to print normal. Let's turn supports off because we don't need that. And then we're going to click on Slice. Now we are ready to print. So how do we go from here to our 3D printer? We'll click on these 3 dots here and click on Download. And that's going to download that to your computer, to the download folder. Now, this next part is one of the hardest parts of what we're going to do. You have to get it from the download folder onto an SD card. So put the SD card into your computer. Many computers nowadays have slots for SD cards already in them. If they don't, you will need a little adapter to do that. And open up your download folder with your file finder. Now the file finder will look a little different on Windows than it does on a Mac, than it does on a Chromebook, and that's something you're going to have to know how to do, how to open up a directory, a folder on your computer. And then if we see here, I've plugged in this SD card over here. I'm on a Mac, so I can just drag this G-code file over to the SD card. There was one already there, so I'm going to say replace. Now I'm going to click on the eject icon to eject my SD card, and then I'm all ready to go. So I put this into my printer right here. I'm ready to print, but I have to load my filament. So this is the next hardest thing to do in 3D printing. You'll notice on each of these computers there's a component that looks like this. That component is called the extruder. Its job is to pull filament off the reel and send it to the hot end. So how do we get our filament into that extruder? Well, I'm going to use my Monoprice Select Mini to demonstrate it, but the technique is the same on all these printers. Will be the same for any standard filament-based printer that uses what's called a Bowden tube extruder. Don't worry about that technical detail. If you have one of these things on your printer, this is going to work for you. So we're going to start here by turning on my 3D printer. And I'm going to go to the icon for prepare. Now you'll have an icon called either prepare or control on your printer. Most of the printers will call it prepare. And there'll be an option under there to heat up or preheat a component. So we're going to click on nozzle and we're going to set that to 210 degrees. Right now this is cool, but in a few moments this is going to be hot and you'll burn yourself if you touch that brass nozzle. So we want to be careful here. Okay, now that our printer is heated up, we need to do two things. I'm going to move my computer out of the way here. We need to do two things in order to successfully load our filament. The first is you have to take your diagonal cutter and you need to cut off that filament at an angle. So there's a point there. The second, and this is really important, it's going to make your life so much easier, and not a lot of people tell you to do this. You have to actually straighten out a segment of filament. So bend it just a little bit, keep working at it till it's really perfectly straight. Now, there's a hole on the side of your extruder. I'm going to place the filament into that hole, and then I want to squeeze this spring here. And you'll see the same spring on each of these printers. Here it would be here. I want to squeeze that just a little bit, not too much, just enough so that this idler gear, so this wheel here moves out of the way, so I have a straight shot from this hole to the hole on the other side where I have my extruder. And then I'm going to push my filament in. Now, if you've straightened your filament and you've cut it on an angle, it will be as easy as what I just did. If you haven't, that end of that filament's not going to want to go in the hole on this side. So we're going to push it through. And now I'm going to keep pushing it through, and I can see here the color change because the filament hit that point, until we get all the way to the end, and then push it gently. And you'll see here filament just came out of the bottom. Now that seemed really easy because I straightened the filament, because I cut it on an angle, and I only pushed this gear enough to move this little wheel out of the way. Okay, now we are all ready. So go back to your main menu, and on your menu select the option to print from the SD card. That will look different on different printers. But almost forgot to do one very important thing, and that is put just a little bit of magic goo. But you want to make sure you cover the area where your print is going to be printing on your print bed. Now you don't need to do this every time. I do it every 3 or 4 times, and after a while it builds up on there, so I wash this off with plain water, and now we're ready to print. So we're going to head and click print. Okay, our printer is just about up to temperature now, and it's going to begin printing our object. So first it's going to print what's called a skirt. That's a line around the print, the outside of the print. That's to help get the filament moving. And you can see it's done that successfully. And then in a couple minutes, we will have a pop can opener. Well, folks, I hope this was helpful, that you learned something today, that you learned that you can use 3D printers without installing Cura or Prusa Slicer or anything else on your computer. You can do it from the web. You then download the G-code file to an SD card, you put it on your printer, and you are ready to go. If you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up, suggest this video to other people. Make sure you check out forum.drvax.com to join in on the discussion. Leave comments below. Have a great day, and everyone should be using 3D printers, and let's continue to learn things together.